Welcome back, teachers. Sadly, summer is ending and the days of sleeping in and relaxing are over. And now it's time for students to call you mom and to ask if they can go to the bathroom 5 minutes after they just went. I just want to say thank you for letting me come up here and talk. Thank you, Dr. Weinhold, for choosing me to do this. And I also wanted to thank the teachers for teaching in general. Dr. Weinhold asked me to come up here and talk about the importance of the student-teacher relationships. Relationships between a student and a teacher affect how much the student learns. In order to explain this to you, I made a list of things that tell what relationships affect and how to build them. Here is Tanner's top tips to good relationships. First, good relationships with students increases their focus, because if you like your teacher, you're going to pay attention to her or him. Secondly, relationships decide what type of attitude your classroom has. If you have a good relationship with your students, you will probably have less I don't want to learn attitudes. Thirdly, relationships decide a student's attitude towards school, and it affects their self-esteem. A good relationship between a teacher and a student helps their self-esteem, because if the student knows you care about them, they're going to think good about themselves. And lastly, your relationship with your students mostly decides how much respect you get. I said mostly because your students should respect you in general, but kids don't always do that. So to gain maximum respect, I would form a good relationship with your students. I have had a ton of amazing teachers here at Union. Mrs. Titter, Mrs. Dickman, Mrs. Bergerman, Mrs. Boland, Mr. Madison, and Mrs. Wall. My most recent teacher, Mrs. Wall, and I had a great relationship. She made it known that she cared about me in the class, and she made learning fun. We had such a good relationship, she didn't call the cops on me and my friend after we poorly TP'd the trees in her front yard. She went out of her way to be nice to the class, and you could talk to her about sports and stuff. She was also easy to approach, and she kept control of the class. We also had a lot in common. For example, she was a basketball coach, and my favorite sport is basketball. Besides talking about relationships, I'm also up here to introduce Steve, or Dr. Weinhold. Now, I knew Dr. Weinhold before he was Dr. Weinhold, because for a while he was the principal at the school that my mom taught at. After school, my mom would come home, talking on and on about how good of a leader he was and how good he was with the teachers. Also, my mom takes a group of students on a trip to somewhere in the country every year, and one year I went. Now, since Dr. Weinhold was the principal, he went with me, my mom, and around 50 middle schoolers to New York City. We hopped in a plane and headed to New York. At New York City, our group went to the 9/11 memorial. My mom and I got different times on our ticket. Fortunately, Dr. Weinhold had the same time as I did, so he took me and some of our group. Before we went, we stopped and ate, and he bought me and another kid lunch. Let's just say that was the best roast beef sandwich I've ever had. After that, we went to the memorial and we talked, and I learned a lot from him. Basically, what I'm trying to say is, Dr. Weinhold is great with kids and adults, and he's a great leader. And now the moment we've all been waiting for, Dr. Weinhold.
I had no idea what Tanner was going to say, but I knew there would be something in there. So I don't even think I want to speak anymore today, because after that, I don't know what anyone else can do. A couple things.